Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Horror After Midnight. I am Poptart, your producer, and of course, joining me is Slinky and K.C. and a special guest tonight, Miss Kristy Stevens, Demonologist. Yay! Yay,
Awesome.
Kristy's here.
Awesome.
Oh, okay. Now, I want to know who wants to start asking questions. We all have stuff. I know we all have stuff. Chris, you want to start with the first one?
Yeah, I can. Can you tell us what is your paranormal background?
Well, I'm a religious demonologist.
Christian demonologist. Okay. That's what they call it.
Yeah, I kind of fall along the same lines as Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Okay.
I actually have pretty much all the same gifts Lorraine Warren had. I am clairsentient, clairaudient, clairvoyant, and precognitive.
Now,
All right.
very interesting. I understand what those terms mean.
Yeah.
Possibly explain that for everybody who's watching.
Okay, so clairsentience is basically feeling spirits and other entities. Clairaudience is the ability to hear. Clairvoyance is to know. And precognition is to see things before they happen, which I have documented proof of in writing.
Okay.
Not fooling around.
Yeah. No.
Okay, well, I'll go
I want
ahead.
to make it good.
I
Man.
know.
wanna make it
I'll
good.
go ahead and I will go ahead and throw one at you. I'm absolutely fascinated by what you do. Absolutely fascinated. I love it. And honestly, I'd love to know what is your favorite. I would call it a case personally that you've worked on.
Actually, I think the most rewarding one was a coworker of mine back in Maryland. She would actually love to speak on my behalf. She's like a walking poster board for me. But she was actually my school bus attendant and had no idea what I could do. You know, it's not something I tell everybody, you know. Some people are like, yay, other people are like, ooh. So, I kind of pick and choose who I divulge my information to. But as we were driving down the road, her uncle happened to pop in, who was deceased. And so did her father. And through the course of school bus run, I got into conversation with her, and I ended up solving her uncle's murder. They originally thought it was a murder, but he came to me to set the record straight and say that it was actually an accidental suicide. They thought he had been really bad into the drugs, and he was trying to get out of the game, go straight. And they weren't willing to let him go. So they tried to scare him while he was outside of an apartment building one night. And the person was dressed in all black, came up to him and had a gun, but they never intended to fire it. But her uncle, reacting with the flight, fright, or freeze kind of motion, he decided to fight, and he grabbed the gun, and as he did, he ended up pulling the trigger against himself and shot himself in the neck. So, ended up solving that for her, which I didn't know anything about this. I didn't even know she had a dead uncle until, that particular time. And then she asked me about her father, who they originally thought committed suicide, and it turned out he didn't. So I kind of set the record straight for that, too. I wouldn't say it's necessarily my favorite case, but it's the one that sticks out the most. And to this day, she still hits me up for readings every now and then. Actually, the other day, I told her years ago when I gave her a reading that I didn't see children in her future. And she hit me up the other day, and she was like, you maybe want to change that statement because I'm pregnant. I told her, I was like, sorry, I'm still not seeing children in your future. Don't hate me, but I'm sorry. It's not going to happen. Following week, she hit me up and was like, you were right. she ended up losing the baby. And I'm like, for once I was really hoping I was wrong. So it's one of those, I've never been wrong, but I always wish I am.
I can understand.
Yeah. Was there a case that you didn't want anything to do with based on your feelings, like vibes you were getting, or, you just didn't want anything to do with it?
This is still actually an ongoing case. But this girl hit me up about, God, I want to say 2 years ago. And she swears up and down she's being haunted. And I just can't find any evidence of it. I've been out to her house twice. She sent me pictures and videos, and I'm just not seeing anything she's seeing. And she just won't accept it. She's on the verge of losing her marriage. She's moved houses 4 times. Her husband's ready to have her locked away in a loony bin. And I'm like, girl, let it go. I'm like, I know hauntings are like the new cool it thing, but I promise you, you don't have one. And to this day, she still hits me up and sends me pictures of her garbage can and trash in it. And how when you have like a carpeted floor and you vacuum it, it leaves lines. Mm-hmm. She'll send me pictures of designs in her floor that she thinks paranormal. I'm like, oh my God, lady, no.
I can understand. Man. I can understand how frustrating that could probably be.
Yeah.
I'm like, can you please, if you're genuinely determined that this is an actual haunting, I'm going to need you to go for a full psych eval. I need to see some paperwork on this.
That's funny.
Oh gosh, no, to
please her, I've sent her stuff to numerous people in the paranormal field, and they're all like, yeah, I don't see anything. So, I gave her multiple opinions from other experts, not just mine.
Yeah.
I do have another one for you.
Yeah, so do I.
I've got a bunch.
See, I got to thinking. I got a ton of them now.
I'm sorry.
That's what happened.
One that sticks out in my mind now. Obviously, our channel is devoted to horror
movies, films,
all
like
those
that.
things.
But
this is more of the real side of what we enjoy watching.
Yeah.
And do you, in your opinion, out of all the films that you've ever watched, do you feel there's any one of them in particular that has gotten the paranormal aspect or demon aspect correct?
Yeah.
A lot of them. And they're all, made up for show and scared. But to be honest, I want to say the one that comes the closest to it is probably the original Exorcist.
Comes the closest to being correct?
Wow. Okay.
Absolute true. That is, aside from a few cheap gimmicks for jump scares, that's almost spot on, honestly.
More of like the demon interaction is what you're talking about being spot on.
Yeah, not necessarily splitting piece soup or any of that, but the cursing, the violence, the levitating, all that is pretty much spot on. And how it goes about becoming. They always say there's 3 stages to demonic possession. There's the oppression stage where, they start trying to get your attention to get permission to be there. Then there's manifestation where they start, coming where they've gotten the permission to be there. Now they're starting to manifest where they're moving objects. Your keys were in your purse 1 minute, next minute you find them on the floor. They move little things around. They get your attention, and then they have you call in psychic mediums, and then they tell you they're little girls, like the Annabelle case, These things do whatever they can to get inside your head. They will even mimic your own family that's deceased. And one gift I do have is the gift of discernment. So they can't hide from me. There's really only one entity that's strong enough to block my vision completely, and that's Satan himself. And even then, it's kind of iffy. I've been fighting these guys since I was 6 years old. So, by that point, you know, I'm in my late 20s. I'm 32. So at this point, I have a hefty resume of demon fighting.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Well,
want
none
to?
of you,
say-
you've done this
yeah.
before. Can you tell us about Anna?
What is it?
I said, I know you've done this before, but can you tell us about Anna?
Yes. Okay, that's kind of a long story, but so I worked in this residential treatment facility back in Maryland, in Baltimore, which if you watch Travel Channel, they say it was here in Charleston. It wasn't. It was back home in Maryland. But I'm assuming they changed it to Charleston because that's where I live, and they were trying to protect the identities of those actually involved. She was a girl. She was a very troubled youth. She had a really bad home life. You know, her mom was kind of in and out. Her dad was never there at all. Her mom was more interested in her boyfriends than her children. Anna was living in Wisconsin with her grandparents, and they completely lost control. They were the kind of parents that, you know, they thought, I'll buy you whatever you want as long as you, you know, stay away. You know, they pretty much gave her everything on a silver platter because they felt bad for what she had to go through. And to make up for the fact that her mom wasn't there. And then, you know, genetics, she started using substances, running away from home, trying to be promiscuous with way older men. So to try and help her out, they sent her to us. And of course, she sat down with a psychiatrist, got put on dozens of medications. She got diagnosed with just about everything in the book. You know, oppositional defiant disorder, bipolar, depression, anxiety, manic depression. Like, there wasn't much this kid didn't have, according to this doctor. And when I first met her, like, she took to me instantly. You know, we sat down, we started having a conversation, and it was like talking to your best friend. You know, my favorite color is blue. I like to color. I like to draw. I'm into this. I'm into that. Same taste in music, you know, things like that. I want to say a week or two went by, and I started noticing subtle changes at first, to where, like, her eyes would be one way, would be normal 1 minute, and the next they'd be completely black, and it was like an empty shell staring back at me. There were times that she would wake up screaming bloody murder in the middle of the night, and my, you know, the security lady that did the overnights would call me at home because this kid was screaming my name in the middle of the night, and she just would not let anyone else near her. So I would always have to go in and calm her down, and the minute I'd show up, she'd fall right back to sleep. And then it got to where I almost had to be at work 24/7 because she wouldn't sleep without me. And that's when she came to me with the notebook of her drawings. And I had started seeing things for myself. Like, I remember one night after she fell asleep, I was sitting there, and it was probably about 11:30 when I finally calmed her down enough to sleep. And I saw a shadow walk past the doorway. And at first, you know, there were 13 other kids on the unit, so I thought it was like one of the boys coming back from the bathroom. So I walked out in the hallway to yell at him for not having permission to go to the bathroom, and nobody was there. And then I turned back into her room, and Anna was sitting straight up in her bed staring at me with this horrified look on her face. And I looked at her, and I'm like, what's wrong? And she just pointed, like, she couldn't even talk. She was just like, and pointed behind me, and I turned around, and there was this huge shadow figure with, like, glowing red eyes. It had, like, super sharp teeth. You know, it kind of looked similar to something you saw in the Babadook, but way uglier and way meaner. Like, this thing, like, you could just feel the hatred coming off of it. And I just looked at it, and I had a cross around my neck. I always carry a cross with me, obviously. I had a cross around my neck, and the minute it saw my cross, it like screeched and disappeared. I was like, okay, that was weird. All right. Anna, you're dreaming. This didn't happen. We're going to go back to sleep now. It's just a bad dream. You're just dreaming of me, you know, trying to convince this kid that it wasn't real, even though I knew it was. And the next day after that is when she started showing me the notebook drawings. And she started talking to me about him and how he would stand in the corner of her room every night and watch her sleep. He would physically choke her where she couldn't breathe. She felt paralyzed. She said that he made her angry and violent, and she didn't want to be that way, but she had no control. And at that point, I was like, okay, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. It stays between us. If it gets out, I will know, because nobody else knows this, and it's only going to hurt you, not me, if you tell this, okay? So that's when I finally came clean to her about, you know, the abilities I had and what I could do. And, you know, she told me that his name, all she knew to call him was the man. And I told her, I was like, keep this between us. I believe you, but it has to stay between us, because at the time, the residential treatment facility I worked for revolved around Catholic religion, which this is a very taboo subject for obvious reasons. So I didn't want the kid to get locked up in a loony bin any more than she already was, you know what I mean? So that night, after we had sat and talked, and I told her that I was gonna do what I could to get rid of it, I would bless her room, you know, I went home. I wanna say I got home about 10 o'clock. And I was reading my Bible, which still have to this day. You can see with the Serenity Prayer on it. And I was looking up how to make holy oil, because holy water doesn't exist. That's just something Catholics created, but it's not real. Trust me, there's a reason they deal with demon possessions more than any other religion. I promise. It's because they're doing shit wrong. Anyway, so I made the holy oil, and I had it sitting next to my bed. And about 11 o'clock, 11:30, I was exhausted. Like, it was out of nowhere. It was like all the energy just drained out of my body. And I remember setting my alarm on my cell phone, and then I laid down in bed, and as soon as my head hit the pillow, I was out cold. Like, there was nothing. 3 seconds flat, and I was snoring. But as soon as I fell asleep, it was like I went straight into a dream. And at first, I was in this pitch black room, like no lights, nothing around me. It was almost like the movie Insidious when they first go into the further and they can't see anything.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it was for me. And I remember I'm looking in this dark room, and out of nowhere, I see a light that's, you know, off in the distance. And I start walking towards it, and it keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then I came into view of the facility I worked for. And I realized I was standing on the unit. And I remember looking at the security cameras and seeing Anna struggling. Like, I could see the shadow on this camera that was like physically choking her. And I remember I rushed into her room, and the minute I walked into the room, I had a cross, like a double cross, which was weird. I've never seen one, but the top of it was just a plain silver cross. But the bottom of it had like Jesus hanging on it. And as I was running into her room, I grabbed onto this, and it snapped in half to where one cross was in my hand, one was around my neck. And the one with Jesus was in my hand. And I remember I ran into the room, and as soon as I walked into the room, it just dead stopped. And it turned and looked at me really creepily. Like, it was literally something out of a horror movie. Like, this must be the things that they're made of. And it just dead stopped and looked at me, and it started coming towards me. And I started shouting out the only prayer I could remember in my dream, which was the Lord's Prayer. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear
no evil.
Yeah. And it came towards me, and as soon as it got close to me, I said something along the lines of, this is a child of God. You have no power here. Go back where you came from. I command you in the name of Jesus. And I slammed the cross against its head, and it starts burning instantly. And it let out the most horrifying scream I've ever heard in my life. And then it just kind of swirled around in a circle and disappeared, like it was never there.
Yeah.
So I went down and I did each window in her room and the door and the outside of the door, I blessed. And I blessed the rest of the kids on the unit. And then after that, I jerked awake in bed because I heard my cell phone going off. And of course, it's like 3:00 in the morning at this point, and it's work calling me. And I'm sitting here like, oh my God, Anna must have had another nightmare. She's freaking out. I got to go to work, So I pick up my phone, and this girl in the security camera, and she's asking me if I'm still in the building. And I'm like, no, it's 3:00 in the morning. I'm home in bed sleeping. She's like, are you serious right now? You're home in bed? Like, yeah, I've been here since like 10 o'clock. Why? She's like, you need to get here now. Like, now. I'm like, okay, all right. So roll out of bed, run out the door, hop in the car. And at this point, I had about an hour drive to work because I lived in like Baltimore, and this was all the way out in Timonium, which you guys wouldn't know that, but it was about an hour drive to work. And I get there, and the lady immediately pulls me into the office where the security cameras are. She's like, I don't know how to tell you this. I'm not even sure what I just saw. She's like, but you need to see this, and then we need to get rid of it. I'm like, what are you talking about? She rolled back the footage from the security camera. And it turned out the whole time I was dreaming, she was literally watching me on camera in the unit. But the thing about it was you could physically see me standing in the doorway of this room, but you could also see through me. I wasn't like solid. I was like a ghost myself. And on the camera, she caught my spirit and the spirit of the demon and Anna. Like, you could actually see the demon on the camera. And she was like, you're telling me you're home in bed, but I can clearly see you here on the unit. And I'm telling her, like, it's not possible. If I would have been here, you would have seen me come past you. There's no way I snuck past you 4 times. I would have had to go past you to go in her room. I would have had to walk past you to bless all the other rooms, and then I'd had to walk past you, come back out, and leave. I'm like, there's no way I got past you all those times. You would have seen me. And that's when, I started learning about astral projection. And it's also one of my gifts. For whatever reason, whenever people are scared and they call for me, it draws my spirit to them no matter where I'm at. Actually, the first time that happened to me was somebody that I didn't even know called me to them, and I actually ended up meeting the person I saved 5 years later when I moved to West Virginia. And since then, I've saved his life about 2 or 3 more times since then. But after the exorcism, Anna went completely back to normal. Like, she had never been sick at all. Every diagnosis that the psychiatrist gave her was reversed. He took her off all of her medications. She stopped being violent, which I forgot to mention that during her most violent times, This girl was 12 years old, and it took 10 full-grown men to hold her down.
Wow.
So she stopped being violent. She started listening to her parents. She got reunited with her mom. Her mom got the help she needed to get her shit together. And last I heard from them was about 4 or 5 years ago, and Anna was getting ready to go to college at UMBC with a full scholarship.
That's great.
Right on. Is
I-
is there something a person does that another person doesn't do that make these things want to attach themselves to people, or is it just random? Like,
Well, like I said, demons need permission to infest your life. However, it's a very, very fine line between an invitation and a non-invitation. And a lot of people don't even realize very simple things that can draw demonic entities to you. First off, they feed on fear. They feed on depression, anxiety. Pretty much any negative emotion you can have is an all-you-can-eat buffet to these things. Things where, like meditation and anything that tells you to clear your mind is welcoming them in. Because ironically, people like me with anxiety that can't be hypnotized are the safest ones from possession, because our minds never shut down long enough for anybody else to pop in. So pretty much anybody that can be hypnotized can be possessed, because you can physically give control of yourself to somebody else, control of your mind. If you're being hypnotized.
There's nobody in there to defend anything.
Exactly. You let your guard down completely, and you surrender, and you open yourself up for whatever wants to come in. Which, you know what? Insidious goes right there with The Exorcist on how possession works. So,
and I think
going back
I was
to
gonna
your question.
I was going to say, I think that this probably is a good time for us also to say, I know there are skeptics out there. There are people that don't necessarily believe that this exists. I understand that. I respect their opinion. However, I prefer to keep an open mind and, try to appreciate everyone out there like yourself that helps others.
Actually, believe it or not, I find people are more skeptical of God than they are demons. People in the paranormal industry, they're all for believing that ghosts walk among us and there's demons out there, but they don't think God's the one out there fighting them. I have an easier time making you believe there's ghosts than I do God. But in my defense, I've died twice. I know what's waiting on the other side. And my philosophy in life has always been, I would rather live my life believing there is a God and die to find out there isn't, than to live my life believing there isn't one and die to find out there is.
And I can respect that.
Everybody is entitled to their own beliefs, but the fact of the matter is, I can appreciate your religion. People should have the same appreciation for mine, And the fact of the matter is, it doesn't cost you anything to believe in God. It doesn't hurt you in any way to believe in it. So what's the harm? It's not like you got to sacrifice animals or be a puppy.
Very definitely.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Now, there is a particular, I'm going to say, potential demonic possession case that I was very interested in, because there was no documented proof that it was for certain a demonic possession. However, the young lady in question, who was supposedly possessed, made a statement. She said something that was supposedly from the demon himself. And I wanted to know your personal take on it. What it said was, we are 6.
You're talking about Annalise Michelle.
I'm sorry?
Annalise Michelle, The Exorcism of Emily Rose?
No. This was actually from a young lady who a group of paranormal investigators were trying to assist in because they felt that it was a paranormal event in the home, and it was just very odd that the young lady said we are six.
Well, then she may not be too far off. I mean, I know a plethora of demons that travel in packs. Legion, Seth comes with 6 of them. Balak, he never travels alone. I've definitely dealt with a lot of demons that don't come alone. I mean, the most I've ever fought before was like 98 at one time in one person. So I mean, the fact of the matter is, the thing is, people have made it so publicized and so commercialized that it is so easy to fake.
Yes. The young lady that I'm speaking of, actually, this was recorded, I believe, approximately 10 years before the Emily Rose movie debuted. So it was very much,
96.
it was very definitely prior to anyone seeing that on film.
Yeah, that case was actually based off of Annalise Michelle. Have you heard of her? Yeah.
Yes.
I've read the case files. I actually got to read the case files of the actual Exorcist story too.
Yeah.
I don't want to say, there's definite ways you can tell when someone is possessed versus a logical explanation. But the problem is there are so many mental health disorders that can mimic a possession. Schizophrenia, especially paranoid schizophrenia, multiple personality disorder. So many different mental health disorders can mimic possession, which is why so many possessions go unnoticed, because they're falsely diagnosed. And it's so easy to confuse the two. Me, I actually have a background in psychology. So, I figured if I was going on the paranormal side, I had to go on the logical side too, so that I knew what I was getting myself into on any side of the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
Not many people are willing to do the kind of training it takes. Like I said, I've been studying this stuff since I was 6, and there's still people out there that know more than I do. I just know from experience, but I also read a lot, and I compare notes, and I compare stories, and I compare different things. There's sometimes, like, there was a case I read a book called Gray's End, and the whole time this girl was thinking that she had a demonic possession in her house or demonic haunting in her house, because every night she would be strangled in her sleep in this particular room. Well, it turns out that it wasn't a demon that was haunting her. It was the people who died on her property and were buried in the walls of her house. Like, basically, it was back, like, I guess her house was built back in the old times when they were first learning how to build houses with, like, concrete and things. And some of the workers got buried alive in the concrete somehow. I can't remember exactly how it happened. I think something collapsed. I think, like, the supports that they had for the house weren't strong enough, and they collapsed on top of them, and they got cemented in the basement. And the ghosts were strangling her, trying to show her what they felt as they were dying. And they were trying to get her attention in that room so that she could pretty much dig them up and bury them properly and get them out of there. Like, they didn't want to be trapped there. Like, their souls were stuck there because their bodies were. And they died so quickly that some of them didn't actually realize they were dead. They were like residual energy where they still felt like they were dying. So they reached out to her to try and change it. So demonic possessions are actually very rare, but they do happen a lot more than people think, But like I said, there's so many people out there that just blame everything on mental health issues or this disorder, that disorder, or, they're skeptics, that's not possible. Well, if what I'm saying isn't possible, then you find me a logical reason for it.
Mm-hmm.
Because the thing about it is, even when you're diagnosing mental health conditions, there are certain things that manifest themselves that even a person with those disorders could not manifest. Levitating, unexplainable strength out of nowhere, talking in different languages they couldn't know, speaking English backwards. That's actually a thing.
No, I mean, trust me, I'm definitely on your side on this one because there are so many things in this world that we cannot explain. I am all for trying to find a logical explanation, but when logic does not give you an explanation, you have to start looking outside the box.
Well, I mean, that's kind of what the job of the paranormal investigators are.
Yeah.
Separate fact from fiction. Find those logical answers, deduct all the possible deductions, and then strip away what's left.
Right. I mean, the fear of dread or being watched. I mean, it could be something as simple as electromagnetic fields. It could be, bad wiring in your home. It could be all these things.
Wires,
Yeah, there's sometimes there's a very logical explanation, but there are things you still in this world cannot explain.
Exactly. Believe it or not, I'm a religious demonologist, and nobody criticizes me more than the churches. I've been condemned as the Antichrist in just about every church I've walked in.
Now, has the church ever asked you for to consult on a case or asked your opinion? Because I mean, you're on their side, so it's
not necessarily a church, but I have had a pastor come to me for advice a few times. He was actually a good friend of mine, and he knew that I was dealing with the paranormal and things like that, and he was just kind of at his wit's end, and he's like, I don't know if this person needs counseling or an exorcism. I'm like, so do both.
that's awesome.
Most churches fear me, especially when you get down to, the precognition, because people aren't supposed to see the future. They think I'm a fortune teller, a witch. I've had the Antichrist. But really, they just fear what they don't understand. And I can't make them understand if they're too scared to listen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, when you talk about precognition, I do understand what you're talking about. It's and do correct me if I am wrong at any point. From what I understand, it's not necessarily a perfect gift. It's not like you're going to be able to choose what you see. You can't see the winning lotto numbers. You can't see all those wonderful things that we wish we could. But I believe with precognition, it's more or less you get to see what you're being allowed to see.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not completely an expert on this, but in my experience and personal opinion, take it or leave it, but like I said, I've never been wrong in a prediction I've made. And I do have written, documented proof that I've made predictions that came true. And the thing about it is, with precognition, you're right, it's not a perfect gift. I can't turn it off and on. I can't just sit down and say, oh, you're going to win the lottery tomorrow. I can't. I can do readings, and, I can answer certain questions, but I can't tell you anything that takes away free will. I can't use my abilities for personal gain. So, I've heard that there's the Edward Case Center is doing this whole anybody that can prove genuine psychic abilities and pass their test will get $1 million. Can't do that because it's personal gain. Can't see your own future. Pretty much what I see, I see it because I'm meant to intervene in it. And usually outside influences at work that are making things happen that shouldn't be happening. And that's usually when I see it and I intervene. I don't see anything I can't change.
Okay.
I'll give you guys a couple examples. Remember earlier when I told you that the first time I astral projected, it was to a person I'd never met before in my life, and I ended up meeting them 5 years later here in West Virginia.
Wow.
He was one of the first people. I mean, I've told people that their car was going to break down on the side of the road. He described in perfect detail how, when, where. And the first girl that I described her car breaking down to, the day that it was going to break down, she changed what I saw. What I see is based on the decisions of those involved. So if your decisions change, so does what I see. Well, that particular time I told her not to drive her black truck back to work. Take her car, take the gray one, because the tire is going to blow. She was dead set on bringing that Explorer back to work, but at the very last second, her youngest daughter convinced her to keep it home so that she could ride in it. The tire blew just like I said it would, exactly how I said it would the first time, because I saw her husband with it, not her. Had she been the one driving it, it would have blown on her in the pouring rain, doing 80 miles an hour down the freeway, and she would have blown the tire, lost control, and fell over the overpass and died. So that was one of the first things I saw that was precognitive. Shell in Tennessee, never met her face to face. She just played a cell phone game with me. And I told her, at first she was worried about her husband losing his job because their housing was tied into his job. And I told her not to worry about it, that he was going to be fine. And she freaked out all day. And at one point, I remember I got a feeling, and I called her, and I was like, can you get up off the bathroom floor and stop crying? And she was like, are you watching me? And I'm like, no, I just had a feeling. And she was like, are you psychic? I'm like, well, I'm starting to think so. And we ended up passing their audit. And then that same night, they had a tornado warning. And it was, what the man said, it's 100% guaranteed, gonna hit, touchdown, destroy everything. I was like, no, you're worried about nothing. I see you going on vacation in a week. Like, I see you with tickets in your hand. You're fine. You're happy and smiling. I promise you, this tornado is not going to hit. She called me the next day and was like, tornado never touched down. Never even came near us. It just passed right on over us. I was like, see, I told you. And then the one most recently that was a pretty big one was actually predicted 4 natural disasters occurring at unnatural times. A friend of mine's, a really close friend of mine, I was just driving down the street one day, which this happens frequently. Like, I can't control what I see or when I see it. Sometimes I don't always see it clearly. It kind of shows up pieces of a puzzle, and I got to put it together and figure out how it fits.
Mm-hmm.
So at first I called her and I'm like, look, I don't even know what I have to tell you, but I have a bad feeling. And I know it affects a male and a female that you're really close to, which at the time I thought was her parents. Turned out to be her daughter. I'm like, I don't even know what's going on right now. I just have a really bad feeling. I'm talking like bad natural disaster feelings, like blizzard, tornado, hurricane, tsunami, that kind of natural disasters. And I'm like, I just have a really bad feeling, and I'm like, I know it's going to affect you somehow, some way, and it's going to be a huge financial loss to you if I don't figure out how to change it. And that's when she told me that her daughter and her new husband were going on their honeymoon on a cruise to I want to say it was the Bahamas. And I told her, I was like, you can't let them go. You can't let them go. It's going to end bad. You know, I'm telling you, there's natural disasters coming. It ain't going to end pretty. And she's like, you're kidding me, right? Like, it's the middle of summer. Like, there's not going to be snow and tsunamis and hurricanes and all that. I'm like, I promise you it's coming. I'm telling you. So 2 weeks before they left on their cruise, the blizzard hit North Carolina. While they were on the cruise, luckily, I had scared my friend so bad that she scared her daughter enough to go to the captain to watch the radar on the weather. Because originally they were predicting clear skies, sunny, all that good fun stuff that they tell you on cruise ships. And the captain was like, look, my mom's telling me there's going to be a bad storm somehow, some way. I don't know how, but it's coming. She's like, you know, just you got to keep an eye out. Like she has a bad feeling. I'm starting to have a bad feeling. And she ended up, while they were on the cruise, they were headed to the last island in the Bahamas. Turns out they were driving straight into the eye of the hurricane that I predicted. Very last second, they got about 20 miles outside of the eye of the hurricane. And that's when the water started getting bad and choppy. And the captain was like, okay, we're just going to turn around now. They made the decision to turn around. Had they continued forward, they would have been straight in the eye of the hurricane, and they would have had to dock in Florida right where the tornado hit. And then 2 weeks after that, tsunami hit Thailand. And I have all of that in writing.
Wow.
I predict that, I want to say 1 or 2 months before it all happened.
See?
That's great.
Fascinating.
Yes, it is.
Now, I'm going to let's see if you guys have any other questions. I have a question, but I want to hold it to the last.
All right.
I
I was going to ask you, how did you end up getting a travel job?
Travel Channel. Okay, that's definitely an interesting story. I actually didn't know I was going to be on Travel Channel when I filmed that. The producer, okay, so let me rewind a little bit here and tell you what led up to them finding me, so it makes sense. So when I first moved to West Virginia, I registered with paranormalsocieties.com, and I originally called my group Carolina Paranormal Research and Relief. That's what it was. Yeah, CPRR. Carolina Paranormal Research and Relief. And when I registered with them, the producers of each haunted TV show goes down the list and picks out different people to see if they can get stories from them. They actually reached out to me a few times before I agreed to do the show, because I didn't believe them at first. I thought they were like scammers pranking me.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, okay, they're going to tell me I'm going to be on TV, and then they're going to want all this money and this, that, and the other. And it's just a big scam, you know, because I'm one of those people. Stuff like that does not happen to me. Like, it just doesn't.
Yeah.
So I think Tobin actually reached out to me a good 5 or 6 times before I finally agreed to talk to him. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to look this guy up because he won't leave me alone. He keeps bugging me. So I looked up the show. I went to the actual website and looked it up. And under the casting credits is where I found Tobin, and the email that he was emailing me from was legit. I was like, okay, I saw it for myself. He's legit. All right, let me hear him out and see what he's got to say. So, you know, I told him the story of Anna, and, you know, I told him, I was like, I don't know if it's going to fit what you want, but I'll tell you anyway. So I ended up writing this whole long story, and I sent it over to him, and then the whole team unanimously voted to put it on the show, which is why I was the first story on the second episode. And he went through my page and read my reviews and everything, so he knew I was a legit person. Like, you can't fake reviews, obviously. I mean, I could, but I ain't got that kind of money to pay people, bribe them,
Yeah.
So he ended up taking me out to New York to film. And yeah, they originally told me that it was only going to air in the UK and Canada. Because at the time I was like, well, I'm fine with people overseas watching me because I don't have to see any of them. I'm like, I don't really want anybody back home to see it. I'm not ready to out myself completely. And they were like, oh no, it's not even going to air in the US. It's just going to be online and people are barely going to know where to find it. And I'm like, okay, whatever, that works. I was like, as long as none of my family back home is going to see it, we're good. Well, coming to find out, I didn't even know I was on Travel Channel until somebody that was watching the show that night tracked me down on Facebook and asked me if I was the person they were watching on TV. Okay. She messaged me on Facebook and she said, I know this is random and I swear I'm not a stalker or anything, but are you the Kristy Stevens that I'm watching on Haunted Hospitals right now? And I was like, oh, you're watching Haunted Hospitals, huh? Yeah, that's cool. Where'd you find it? And she was like, Travel Channel? What? What do you mean about Travel Channel? They didn't tell me that. They told me it wasn't going to air here, let alone on a major TV network. That's how it came to be. Like, I had no idea about any of it. I had no idea it was going to be on Travel Channel.
Yeah, you would have thought they would have told you that.
Another one. Well, I will go ahead. I'm going to ask the question. I know you have to get on with your evening. We appreciate you very much for talking to us. We absolutely do. It's been wonderful.
Yeah, it's really cool.
This is fun to me. Like, I don't even consider this work. Like, I love doing this stuff. Makes me feel important.
Well, we like everybody who comes on our show to have a good time.
Exactly.
That's the big thing. We want everyone to have a good time.
It's not formal, no bullshit.
No.
My interview the first time.
Yeah, no. And I'll say it again, even if you do not believe, even if you are skeptical or a skeptic, at least have the decency to be appreciative of other people's opinions. Everyone has how they feel, what they think. They're individuals, and we respect everyone for that.
My philosophy in this field is I do things my way. It works for me. But that doesn't mean that my way is the only way. You know what I mean? It seems that every paranormal investigator, demonologist, demon hunter, demon fighter, whatever you want to call us, like, we all come together for a common purpose. Like, our purpose is supposed to be to help people, not to be cutthroat in this industry. You know what I mean? Like, everybody's out for themselves when really you should be out for the people you're supposed to help. But, this is my way. This is what works for me. You have your own experiences. You know what works for you. By all means, if it works for you, do what works for you. But don't criticize what I'm doing because it's not your way.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Like I said,
one size fits all. God, even the ghosts aren't one size fits all.
No. And like I said, as long as everyone stays respectful and appreciates, everyone has an opinion, that's the important thing.
Yep.
Everyone has how they feel personally, and that's the important thing. The question I have to ask you, and you can certainly refuse. Believe me, you can certainly refuse.
What the fuck are you gonna ask her?
Just stop.
Jesus
It's
Christ.
nothing that
I don't know
bad.
what's gonna come out of her mouth.
No. You've been speaking with us now for, about 45 minutes or better.
Chris lost his shit.
And I know. Yeah, you never know what I'm going to say. Do you have any, and I'm certainly not asking for a reading because this is what you do for your life, but do you have any feelings about the three people that you're speaking with?
Yeah. I tell you guys a lot.
She's creeping me out. She's scaring me.
She's creeping you out. Huh?
What particularly do you want to know?
Do you see anything good for us?
Yes.
Beautiful.
All right.
Like I said, I don't.
As of right now, it's going to take a little while, but I do see your show becoming very successful. Unfortunately, I see what you get, not how you get there, which is the part that sucks about these visions. Sometimes I see how you get there, not what you get, but usually I see what you get, not how you get there. But that's why I can't take away free will. Because if someone were to come to me and say, who am I going to marry? I could tell you who you're going to marry. You know what I mean? I could tell you right now, you could marry the guy sitting next to you. You know what I mean? But your timing and the timing for that timeline may not match up right then and there. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
if I told you you're going to marry Slinky tomorrow, you would put your life on hold waiting for that to happen, and you would miss the steps you had to take to get there.
We talked about stuff like that before. Yeah.
Ask me, will I get married? I can tell you based on what your decision is at that time, whether or not it'll happen. I actually had a client come to me one time and she asked me that question. She asked me, do you see marriage and kids in my future? And I told her, I was like, maybe somewhere way down the road, but right now, no. I don't see any of it. I don't feel like that's what you want. I feel like you're more career driven and you have goals and ambitions, and you know that having a family and being married would hold you back from it, and you're not ready for that right now. And she was like, thank you. For the love of God, thank you. And I'm like, what? I'm like, I thought I was telling you something you didn't want to hear. She's like, no. She's like, I've been to 9 other psychics, and I paid these people hundreds of dollars to tell me things that I know are not going to happen. She's like, I don't want to get married. I don't want to have kids. I was doing this to try and test and find the frauds and expose them. She's like, and you're the first one I can tell is actually genuine. Like, she was literally going around to different psychics trying to prove them as fakes. And she's like, you know, I tried my damnedest with you and I just couldn't come up with anything that wasn't right. Yeah, I definitely see you guys going somewhere in the future. At least that's all your goals right now, is to make the show whatever it can be, right?
Correct.
I do see. I'm not really sure how it happens, but I feel like there's a significant event that happens that leads to like the floodgates opening up for you guys. You know, I don't know what that event is, unfortunately, but I feel like something significant is going to happen, and then overnight, y'all are going to just take off. Like you're going to find that one right person that's going to put you in the right hands.
Awesome.
You know, classes. I'm pursuing modeling. I've got a couple auditions for movies coming up, so you know, definitely keep y'all in mind. Hook you up, help you out, make you look pretty.
We always take looking pretty.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
I always tell my customers at McDonald's when I'm like begging them for surveys, I'm like, come on, hook me up, help me out, make me look pretty. I'll even pose for you. Just make sure you get my good side. If you can figure out which one it is, I still haven't.
Now, like I said, that was more of a tongue-in-cheek kind of a question for you, but we do greatly appreciate you saying that there are good things in our future. Absolutely.
Take it. We'll take it. That's awesome.
But you definitely got potential coming your way. It's going to be a long, hard road to get there, though. You just got to have the grit and determination to do it. And you just got to say, fuck the haters, man.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I live with him.
We're doing what we love. So.
I live with him. That's a long and hard enough road as it is.
Oh, please.
Uh,
The abuse I deal with.
Oh, you should hear what my husband's opinion is being married to me. He's like, do you guys have any idea how hard it is being married to a psychic? I can't tell for shit I haven't even done yet.
That's funny. That's funny. He's already in the doghouse before he does it.
Years old, okay? We have been friends our entire lives. Our parents go back 4 generations with each other, right? Like, he's adopted, so, like, he came along when his brothers and sisters and parents were a lot older. So, like, his grandmother grew up with my great-grandparents. His mom and dad grew up with my grandmother. His brothers and sisters grew up with my mom, and then he and I grew up together. Which, it's funny that we ended up married because we hated each other when we were kids. Like, you couldn't leave us alone in a room together without us trying to kill each other. And I remember we got into an argument one time, and I said, you know what, you little shit? You better start being nice to me because you're going to marry me someday. When you do, I'm going to make your life a living hell. Of course, he was 8 and I was 12, so he's like, no, I won't. No, I won't. I'll never marry you. You're fat. You're stupid. You're ugly. I hate you. I'll never love you. Yeah, we see how well that worked out, right? 15 years later, we walked down the aisle and said, I do.
That's funny.
I actually,
You want to tell her the story?
yeah, I'll actually tell you a very interesting
Listen
story.
to this. This is pretty cool.
When I was very young, I would say probably that 4 to 6 kind of range. I told my mother that I was going to marry. Not happening. A yellow prince. And my mom's like, what? Yes, a yellow prince. Never for a second thought about the significance of that. Never did. I met Mr. Slinky here almost 3 years ago. And he uses
my professional art douchebag name.
Yeah, douchebag name. He goes by Slinky Giallo. Giallo is Italian for yellow. And started using that name prior to me ever meeting him.
Yeah, like two or 3 years before I put that name out there.
And I only knew about the yellow portion of this. And I didn't even think about it. So we had been together for about a year.
Yeah, I think so.
It was almost a year. And I said to him, I'm like, it's kind of funny, you're always linking Giallo. I told my mother I was going to marry a yellow prince. He stops dead because his mother used to have a magnet. Was it a magnet?
It was a set of magnets that were words. And you put them on the fridge and we'd be like, don't eat all the Cheerios.
No, actually what she had is
under my cap and gown picture from graduation, she had sports print. She actually used the word print.
So
I always thought that was kind of funny.
We always have found that very interesting that I told my mother I was going to marry a yellow prince.
Oh, you do have abilities yourself.
What? I didn't hear what you said.
She says that I have abilities myself.
Oh, that's funny.
You do.
Can you see auras of people?
Do I?
Yeah.
It's not one of my better gifts, but it's doable if I really concentrate on it. But it's not, I can tell you what color your aura is, but to ask me what it means, good luck. That's an area I'm still working on studying. I haven't really had too much time to devote to that study yet. But
Gotcha.
I'm still working on each area, but it's definitely something I'm looking into more often because it's becoming a lot more popular, but not something I'm great at right now. Like I said, I could tell you what color your aura is, but I couldn't tell you what it means.
Now, if someone enters a room or you converse with someone who does have similar gifts, do you know?
How can I tell? It's kind of like magnets.
Mm-hmm.
You're kind of drawn to each other. Like you can just feel it. Like I can tell. I feel like you can see things once in a while, but you feel things more than anything.
The universe is off. The universe is off. That's what I hear coming out of the bathroom.
Usually my statement is there's something wrong in the universe.
Yeah, she says that. Something's off. I don't know what it is. Just something's off.
You are also empathic, which means you feel the weight of the world on your shoulders like me. You can physically feel the pain of others and the pain and suffering in their emotions. Like, if you're really, you could be in the best mood of your life. You could have literally just won the lottery, be the happiest person in the world, and somebody that's in a bad mood can come in and take you down 20 notches and make you feel just as shitty as they do instantly. It's because you're an empath.
Yeah. Yep. That's you.
You literally feel emotions. And you can also manipulate others' emotions if you know how to do it correctly. And what I mean by that is usually if somebody's in a bad mood, you just automatically know what needs to be said or what needs to be done to change it without anybody having to say a word. It just comes naturally.
I'm just going to sit quietly here. What was that, Kristy?
I said, did I pass the test yet?
Yeah, I think you did.
Most people like to test me and see what I'm capable of because they don't believe in psychics. Because people like Teresa Caputo give people like me a bad name.
Correct.
But in any of my readings, you can ask any of my clients. I have a whole page full of them on Facebook. But unless I have to find a deceased loved one that isn't present, you know, if somebody comes to me asking for communicate with a deceased loved one, that's the only time I will ask information. You know, I'll ask, you know, I need a name because I don't know who I'm looking for. And I need something that would distinguish them from everyone else. Because, you know, a lot of people have the same names. And it's not like I'm asking you for a picture, because if I ask you for a picture, then I already know what this person looks like. And I can tell you whatever the hell I want and you'd believe it. You know what I mean? So I make my readings as pure and genuine as possible. So I don't ask for any information. And the fact of the matter is, so many psychics out there are frauds. Like I said, first off, a genuine psychic doesn't have a need for props. Everything comes right off the top of their head, like I just did to you. All comes off the top of their head. I don't need crystal balls or tarot cards or dowsing rods to get results. It's all right here. Secondly, a genuine psychic is not going to fish you for information, because when they do, what they are doing is they are trying to figure out what it is you want to hear and then create this whole scenario based off what they think you want. And why is that? Because they want you to keep coming back. And if you continue telling people what they want to hear, they'll come back to you because you're never going to disagree with them. Me, a genuine psychic, will tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. Also, we don't charge astronomical fees to do it. Occultic psychics that use the props, they charge anywhere from $50 to $100 and some for 20-minute sessions. That's not a genuine psychic. That's somebody that's out to put on a show and make money. Someone like me, I work based off donations because I can't guarantee results. And I will tell you that 1,000,000 times. You know, if you come to me for a reading, I will give you my best answers. If I can't answer as a psychic, I'll answer as a counselor. Because there are certain things I cannot answer as a psychic. The only time I can interfere with free will is if it is literally a matter of life or death. Other than that, I can't take away free will. Because again, if I tell you certain things, you'll miss the steps you got to take to get there. And a fake psychic won't care about what steps you have to take to get there. They'll just tell you what you want to hear and watch you put your life on hold waiting for it to happen. And they're all about the money and putting on a show. I don't do anything. And a real psychic would never. They wouldn't degrade themselves to put on. You know, a real psychic has no reason to act like a circus performer. We know what we can do and we're good at it. You know, not to mention those other psychics, they're wrong more than they're right. I've never been wrong, and I got a whole page of people standing there that'll tell you I've never been wrong. you know, but people like Teresa Caputo, she reads large audiences so that, you know, and she picks the most common things to shell out there. Who's got a grandmother named Mary or Margaret or this, that?
Yeah.
Who's got a grandmother who died from Alzheimer's or had a leg injury? Come on, these are all common things. Everybody dies. Everybody dies, and everybody has lost somebody.
Mhm.
And she is capitalizing on it. And that shit pisses me off. I'm not even gonna lie. Like, you're charging innocent people thousands of dollars because you are taking advantage of their grief. And that is not okay with me.
No.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be okay with anyone.
Yeah, no.
It shouldn't, but I mean, if you can sit at home and get paid $1,500 to sit down and tell somebody what you think they want to hear, why not do it? But the
Understood.
ones that suffer the most, financially destitute, nomadic, can never settle in one place, like me. I've done moved 5 times since I've been in the state because I go where my purpose takes me, you know, and I'm always financially hard up. You know, there's never a point in time where I'm not struggling. And it's because it's literally punishment for interfering where I'm not wanted. You know, anytime I help somebody, I suffer a consequence for it. You know, I'm not untouchable. You know, bad shit happens to me all the time. But I bounce back from it. People like us, we suffer for the sake of humanity, unfortunately.
Do you understand?
All right.
Kristy, it has been a pleasure, and we do thank you so much for coming on the show. Absolutely.
For real.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time.
That was fun. Let's do it again sometime, guys.